So we are now on day 7 of the readathon. This is the last day. It's Sunday. It's actually just like around 2 hours before we're supposed to go live for the wrap-up show, the Historical Romance Readathon Live. I'm sure I'm going to have it on my channel so that if you do miss our discussion of our group read Olivia and the Masked Duke by Grace Galloway, you can catch up on it and like have fun with all our shenanigans and see how we gave a grand prize to 2 viewers of the show and also many other prizes throughout the whole week. But I thought I would just sit down and kind of wrap up the rest of the books that I did read for the readathon and also like a current read that I'm reading right now that I'm not sure if I can finish before midnight tonight. But basically yesterday I didn't really do much. Like I don't think I vlogged at all, so like my bad, but I did end up still reading a couple books. I actually don't even know where I left off, so hopefully I am including all the books that I did read and I didn't miss out any books. But anyways, so the next book that I did read was actually a Maya Banks book. This one's called Seduction of a Highland Lass, and now this one is part of the McCabe trilogy, and this is book number 2. So I read book number 1 years ago. I think like it must have been at least 2 years ago now, and nope, not 2 years, 3 years ago according to Goodreads. I read that specifically because Jess from Peace Love Books and also the co-host and also one of my best friends here on BookTube, she read that book and I was like, I'm gonna read what Jess reads. So I picked that one up and I really enjoyed it. So that one was called In Bed with a Highlander, and that was book number 1, and it was like super angsty, even though like it was like really good angst. It made me feel so anxious that I just like forgot about the whole entire series, or I was very reluctant to read the series. Long story short, I read book number 2 because I finally bit the bullet, and now this one is basically about our other male hero. He is mentioned in book number 1 obviously, and this is his story where he gets suddenly attacked and then he's in grave danger and he's about to die. But then our heroine, who is like kind of like outsider of the clan and like an outsider of like the whole group, she's just like a real stranger, but she takes him in and she actually heals him, and he, through all his like lucid dreaming and like recovering process, he actually falls in love with our heroine and he feels like this really strong attraction to her and he's not willing to let her go. And then our heroine feels the same way. They have this undescribable bond that they have with each other and they can't let each other go, but there is things that are pulling them apart, especially since like the clan's not really like accepting of her at first. Like the clan is very weary of her, doesn't really know if she's an enemy or disguised as someone else. And then meanwhile our hero actually has other obligations. Our hero is actually supposed to be engaged to someone else, and then now he's in love with our heroine, so that becomes like an issue. This is like their love story. The angst was definitely there, but I also just didn't like the story setup of this, mostly because our heroine was so reluctant to go with our hero because she knows that he needs to marry someone else. So I just felt kind of icky towards it and I didn't really like it as much as the first one. So I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I did pick up was actually an entangled romance ebook. So what I realized during this readathon was that the books that I'm picking up are very new authors, or authors that are publishing through lines that are not like traditionally published slash like publicized a lot in print media slash like they're mostly ebook format or they're indie published. So I'm not picking up like the Avon romances that I usually talk about on my channel. I'm not talking about like the new Avon releases that just came out this year that have like a strong publicity team afterwards. I'm talking about like releases that kind of come out and it's like spread through word of mouth. So hopefully you guys are finding some books to add to your TBRs. I don't know why I chose to do this, like go this indie route or go this like lesser known historical romance route. I think I'm just picking up books of my interest and these are just sparking my interest. So the next book that I did pick up is this interesting one called Dare to be a Duchess by Sapina Bog. And now this one was a diverse historical romance that I really appreciated because it just spoke a lot about like the history of what was actually happening back then in the Regency era. So our main heroine is actually mixed race. She is half half Indian, half Caucasian, and because of her darker skin tones and because people know her lineage, they don't accept her in society as much as you would think that they would. Actually, like, you know what, scrap that. Like, we know that, you know, it was not accepting back then. But our heroine was lucky enough to be adopted into like this family after her parents' tragic death by her uncle. And then afterwards her uncle actually comes from like a very like affluent family, and her father was actually a very affluent person too as well, but he gave up everything to marry her mom, who is of Indian descent. So she grew up in this household with her best friend, and she has always been attracted to her best friend's older brother, but they never really did anything about it until like one day they have a masquerade ball, like a costume ball, and she attracts his attention, and then they kiss, and then they know that there is something there and magical. But then he has his own obligations of marrying someone that society does accept so that he can carry out his title proudly and that he won't bring shame upon his name, because he's very influenced by his evil mother, who basically says that you need to marry someone who is with status and with wealth so that our family name would not be dragged through the mud. So our hero is manipulated into thinking that our heroine is not worthy of him. So he becomes like this giant jerk in the book because of his own insecurities, and he takes it out on our heroine, who like literally did nothing except for being born. So I felt really bad for our heroine, and I felt awful about our hero. Like, I was just like, why do we even support this guy? Towards the end, there are some apologies that are made, and our hero is able to show her that he really cares about her and that he can't marry anyone else but her. So that was really cute. And then afterwards, it also discussed a lot about like her struggles in society and kind of opened the eyes to readers of like what it would be like to be of a different race in England at that time. So the writing itself was a little bit problematic for me, mostly because it didn't feel like it was a historical romance. So I feel like if you struggle with historical romance because the writing might be a little bit too stiff, might be a little bit too proper, it's not something you're used to, maybe try this one, because this one felt a little bit modern to me, mostly because our heroine actually said whatever, and I was like, I'm pretty sure like that's slang and that like people don't really say whatever back then. So that kind of like irked me a little bit, mostly because I'm used to like Regency era like writing, and I'm like reading historical romance for that vibe, and I wasn't getting that vibe in this book. Overall, I still enjoyed it, and I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars because I felt that it was better than a 3, but it wasn't a 4. Okay, so then the next read that I did pick up was actually a novella, and this one is called The Seduction of Viscount Vice by Nicola Davidson, and this is actually book number 3 in her Fallen series. It's a novella series. I think I talked about book number 1 and 2 in my other clip, but this one is a second chance romance. This is the last novella in that series. It's finally marrying off our hero, who is named Vice, and basically he's heartbroken. He's been heartbroken ever since like his first love when he was like 17 maybe, and then afterwards, so he runs this like pleasure club with his 2 friends from book number 1 and book number 2, and he is so upset that like his friends who were single or who was married in an unhappy marriage are now happy with the love of their lives, and he's just like so tired of people always asking him like, when are you gonna get hitched? So he like doesn't care, but he does care. And then he realizes that someone has probably broken into his den and that they are trying to steal information, and then he catches him, and then only to realize that him is actually a her, and that person who is dressed up like a boy is actually his first love and his first true love. So our heroine is dressed up as a boy to steal secrets from the den so that she can like bring back the secrets into her own club so that they can be competitors with each other. And then our heroine finally like lets him know why he left him like 10 years ago and why she had to break off the engagement and like break up all of these things. So expect this book to be sensual, hot, and a little bit angsty. For me, I just felt like that it could have been better and it could have been executed better. I felt like throughout like the first 60% of this novella, we didn't know why she left him. We didn't know what actually happened between them two. And then the last like 30% of the novella, it was like her explaining to him, and it was already like a little too late for the reader to really build an emotional connection for the two characters and feel bad for the two characters. So that's why I only gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, and it wasn't like my favorite of the novellas, because the previous two I did give 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I want to talk about is actually our group read, which is Olivia and the Masked Duke by Grace Calloway. And now this one I really enjoyed. I read this one physically, and I also went to the ebook because physically it was like a little bit harder to flip pages sometimes. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I read it and I immediately like sunk into Grace's writing. I find that Grace's writing is very captivating and it's intoxicating. She does a really good job at world building and making you feel and get to know the characters, and you just feel so nice being in that world that she's creating. So this book is about this girl who is 12 years younger than our hero. They actually meet because they are very close family friends with each other. So he's close with like the dad and the mom, and then so by extension to her too as well. So we meet them when she actually gets into an accident, falls into a river, and then he saves her, and then that's how they start their friendship. And then throughout this book we kind of go past and present, and we flip back and forth between like events that are happening. And she has immediately like kind of like fallen in love with him through all the years that they've got to know each other, but she also knows that he's been through a lot because he was once married and then his wife died, and then he had struggled with his own things, and then it was like this whole complicated mess. But she has always remained to be like this beacon of light for our hero, and that is like what Grace is kind of like hammering in this book. Like, we know that she is pure, she is good, and she is loving, she is trusting, she is everything holy in this world, basically. But our heroine is also very rambunctious in a way, and she is very smart and intelligent, and she's not willing to kind of like sit down, just settle to becoming a duchess. She wants to do something with her life. And so she becomes a sleuth, and she joins this like lady, like I think it's called like Lady Charlotte's, like, I don't know, it's like a detective agency but for females, and it's like female detectives investigating female like crimes. And then afterwards our heroine gets a mission and she is like working undercover. Meanwhile our hero is also working undercover because he has his own mission that he carries out to like bring justice to society that like maybe like the authorities can't. So they both are hiding a lot of secrets from each other, and it was so fun to see them kind of like come together all the time by accident. But also at the same time she disguises herself every time she goes out because obviously she can't be known or else like scandal will start, and then he wears a mask because he needs to cover up his face too. But for some freaking reason our hero always recognizes our heroine no matter what disguise she's wearing. So I'm just thinking in my head, like, how bad are her disguises for him to keep seeing it and then like everybody else being oblivious? So I guess like maybe that's like the power of true love. Like, you will always be able to see who your true love is, no matter what wig she's wearing, no matter what makeup she's wearing, no matter what posture she's putting her body in, or like what accent she's using. I don't know. That was like a really funny like problem that I had with the book. And then also like this book was very enjoyable because it was like very interesting and also very educating. Like, it was educative of like what actually happened between Britain and China and the Opium Wars, and also discussion of racism in like England towards the Chinese. And then afterwards it discussed a lot about like what actually went down between these two countries and how it impacted people. So it talked a lot about drug addiction. So this is like kind of like a trigger warning. So if you guys don't like to read books about drugs and usage of drugs, don't read this one, because literally the whole plot line is trying to figure out who is putting out these dangerous substances out onto the streets and causing these people to die. Overall, I really enjoyed it, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, mostly because I had issues with our main heroine, who was a puppy dog and who really followed him every step of the way and like loved him for no matter what he did, which is fine because like that's like love and everything, and I understand that. But also at the same time, like, he was not this supportive of her with her own detective agency work. Like, he laid down the law. He really wanted to dominate her because of his own past. But I wanted those pivotal moments to be kind of stretched out and for it to be longer so that readers can feel that triumphant feeling that our character, who has been in love with this male for so long, finally realizing that she is an independent woman and that she can stand her own ground and that she can be by herself and be happy, and that she is perfectly okay with being alone, so that she is stronger in a relationship once she gets into one. So that's what I wanted, and I felt like that was like way too short, so that's why I took off a star 2 as well. So 4 out of 5 stars. I still recommend you to check it out. And I actually, like, as soon as I was reading it, I wanted to buy book number 2, and I was like getting ready to read book number 2, but then I realized that book number 2 is coming out in September of this year, so I just want book number 2 now. So this morning I actually was able to finish an audiobook, and it's actually one of the books that was on my TBR. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but like I literally like ignored my whole TBR and I went off the rails, just like picked any book that sparked my fancy. So the one that I finally finished on my TBR is The Pirate Takes a Bride by Shannon Galen. And now this one is a second chance romance. So basically our heroine was in love with our hero. They were supposed to be betrothed, but then our hero decides to ruin everything by kissing someone else and breaks our heroine's heart. And then fast forward a couple years, everybody has matured and developed more and has grown into themselves, and a mistake actually happens. Like, the priest or the person who conducts the marriage between like two people accidentally marries him and her instead of like their friends, which is like hilarious, and I don't even know how it happens, and I'm pretty sure you can get an annulment from it, but you know, roll with it, extension of belief, just like believe it. And then she quickly realizes that he's hiding something, and that something is his career, which is a pirate. And they set forth on a ship, and she meets all the crew members. She gets her hands dirty. She like does all these things to help out with the ship. There's a lot of pirate attacks. There's a lot of action scenes, and of course there are a lot of touching and sweet moments too as well between our hero and heroine. Of course, our hero is actually a good pirate, and he's kind of like Robin Hood. He steals things to give it to the poor, and then our heroine falls in love with him all over again. So this one, I liked it, I enjoyed it, and it was my first Shannon Galen book, which is pretty cool, and I am going to pursue and read more of her books because I enjoyed her writing. This one, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, mostly because everything was kind of happening really fast. Like, this book is actually pretty short. It's only like 8 hours and like 30 minutes on an audiobook. So it felt a little bit rushed, and I didn't get that development I would normally get in longer historical romances. But anyways, that is it for kind of like a wrap up of my reading for the historical romance readathon. I'm so happy that so many people actually joined the historical romance readathon. I feel like with each readathon that we do, it gets bigger and bigger. This year was huge. Like, we had 7 days of giveaways because all these authors came up to us and was like, hey, like, you know, we can give you books, like, so that you can spread the awareness of historical romance. And then we had publishers kind of going like, yeah, we can support this readathon. This readathon's great. Like, I had so much fun doing it. And then we also had Instagram lives once again with some of our favorite authors. So Lacey did an Instagram live with Grace Calloway, and then Jessica did an Instagram live with Erica Ridley, and then I did an Instagram live with Lenora Bell. So if you guys want to check those out, definitely go onto our Instagram pages and go check out those interviews, because I had such a fun time talking to Lenora. I love Lenora's books, and I just to have a conversation with your favorite author about her books and also about like romance in general is like a dream come true. So I really enjoyed that. But hopefully you guys will enjoy more historical romances to come. I love reading comments where our viewers tell us that they've never tried historical romance before, and that we were the ones that kind of pushed them into trying historical romance and actually liking it. And I was also talking about how the new generation of historical romance readers are younger now, and it feels good because it's been so long that this genre has been read by an older generation of his romance readers, which is fine, but it's like this genre can be appreciated and loved by so many of us, no matter the age group. So that's what the point of this readathon was. But anyways, I'll see you guys next time with a new video and also possibly a new readathon. Bye.